You gotta come down even if you don't know why. Yes, I don't know. I didn't try that. I should think so. I'm sure you got a cursor click in that data. Let's start it again. Just click the center. Basically, the cursor's there, the toggles pop on.
What's wrong with it?
Microphones will work. You may not have so many people.
I will try to remember when I come.
I just get it hot and then moderate it. Obviously not gonna get as hot as you don't moderate it.
Yeah. The sound is telling me. I left my charger on last night, so it's gonna get better. My other car has a bit better, so. And we can't get to our jumper cables because we have cars parked in front of me. And the door you have to open.
Gavin has a couple of, do you want?
Mine, I'm gonna ask my neighbors.
Oh, where's this one?
I have in the back of the car one of those portable boxes that you clip to your battery, and it's supposed to do the same as your neighbor's car. You see, like
Oh, really?
one of those jump start boxes, you can charge it with them on. I could get it from the back. You can take with
figure out how to
reach
do
the
that.
battery and flip some switches like that.
Yeah, I'd love to try that. It's, cause it was gonna be hard to get anything near my car. It's pulled all the way into the garage and there's this things. Like,
As long as you can open the hood.
Oh. Thank you. I'm sure. Ready?
Make sure the microphone is connected.
It's not hard. This just has to be pulled this way here, no? I just got it. It's not. See.
Just gonna toggle the microphone.
That's done. I don't see anything here. This circles are a bit
Oh,
funny. I don't know.
Because it's not the Mac. So
Yeah, you can just pull it all the way.
one at a time.
Yeah, yeah. 3 of them are there. And then this one.
So like with the Apple holding it one at
Somehow it's not very elegant.
You're welcome.
I think I'm not used to this. You're right.
I'm not used to this.
You know, I have to get the hang of it, that's all. Now the volume went, connect my audio again, okay? Oh good, I'm glad you're here, everybody is here, yeah. Can you hear? Everybody can hear, correct? Are you able to hear me? Okay, good. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinnavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Bhadram Karnedhi Shriniyaam Devaah Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraah Sthirairangai Stushtvagam Sastanobhihi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indra Vruddhashravah Swasti nः Pusha Vishvavedaः Swasti nastarkshyo Arishtanemiः Swasti no Brihaspatirdadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you. And these lights also can come on. I don't know where the switch is. Perfect, thank you. So, introducing the next mantra, Adi Shankara has talks about, I think we already saw that, how the things that were talked about in short are going to be discussed more in detail. We already saw one such mantra which was talked more in detail. What was that? Agnir Murdha Chakshushi Chandra Suryau Dishaha Shrotre Vagvrata Vivratascha Vedaha Vayuhu Pranaha Hridayam Vishvamasya Padbhyam Prithivi Hi Esha Sarva Bhutantaratma. This is the vision of Bhagavan. The Upanishad's vision of Bhagavan, that which is formless. I mean, if supposing that were to have a form, because you cannot relate to the formless. We have to understand this very clearly. This whole Nirgun Sagun business, is just useless, because the thing, people, in India, they have this funny way of saying, so, do you worship Nirgun or do you worship Sagun? Nirgun means without attributes. Gunaha na vartate, where the gunas do not exist, no attributes at all. So can you worship something without attributes? I mean, come on, give yourself a break, And this is something which is totally illogical, because how can worship means relating? So you relate to the formless, you do a waltz with the formless, cha cha cha. How are you going to do that? How? No, I'm just going to pretend the formless is air. Well, air has a form.
Can't even ask the question.
Huh?
Can't even ask this question.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole thing is, this Nirgun Sagun business is strange. It's almost like, will you have coffee or will you have tea? That's okay, because both tea and coffee belong to the same order of reality. Here Sagun means it is superimposed. Certain qualifications, certain attributes are deliberately seen as superimposed in this mantra, so that we can visualize, quote unquote, that which is beyond forms. Because otherwise, if it is formless, it has to be you. It has to include you. It cannot be formless and be an object of worship. It cannot. Because if it's a formless, it's not an object, it is a subject. Oh, so we are objectifying Bhagavan in this last mantra? Absolutely. Yeah. And how can you objectify Bhagavan? You cannot. That's the whole point. That's why the whole idea is to see it as both immanent and transcendental. Immanent means the creation is non-separate from the creator. And from that standpoint, it is available for worship. Why? Because who is worshipping? The miserable, embodied complex person with complex issues, not knowing where to go, feeling upset, feeling trapped in this universe with all the laws, and feeling that these laws are constricting my style, and feeling unable to relate to those laws. And so therefore, if there are laws, of course there is the lawmaker, because without the maker of the laws cannot exist. In fact, the laws themselves are a manifestation of the maker. This is the immanent understanding of the vision of Bhagavan, God. Immanent means it is in the form of the universe, but without having undergone any change. I mean, even in the Christian tradition, they have this immanence, but then they have to bring in, because they don't have this God. This God has created the universe and then repaired to heaven somewhere. Like making like the shady real estate builder who builds just inferior buildings, and then what? Repairs for himself. He builds something nice and goes and sits there. So this is not something which because in Christianity we are stuck with this theological view. Therefore they have to bring in the Holy Ghost to bring in the idea of all pervasiveness. Why this? So because God who is embodied, they cannot have an embodied God. God is formless, but He is in heaven, and it's a He. We know it's for sure it's a He, that's what they will say. But then if God is in heaven, then this universe feels abandoned. And for the person in this universe, some kind of a connection to God is needed, because the person who is alienated, that is the person we are talking about. So therefore, they have to bring in the Holy Spirit, and that Spirit of God is the immanent aspect of God. This is what they have to do in certain theologies. I don't know about Islam. I don't know if this part is there or not. That's something to look at. I don't think it is there. So then we come to this. In our tradition, in the Vedic tradition, we don't have this problem of God abandoning the universe. We don't have this problem, because built into the vision is this whole understanding of Bhagavan being everything, but not any one thing in particular. Lending its existence, its very presence to all the things that exist. So the existence can never be destroyed, and that existence is Bhagavan. So this is the immanent aspect, that this Bhagavan is everywhere, and nothing is away from Bhagavan, including the miserable fellow who is feeling alienated. Nothing is away, no one is away from Bhagavan. And this Bhagavan that is immanent gives us a leverage here to worship in any which way we like. Like if you are looking at a photo of somebody, you're looking at a photo of Swamiji, or you're looking at a photo of a loved one, somebody in your family. And in India, especially the departed people, for them also we have an altar, an ancestor altar. So, one's grandmother, mother, father, whoever it is, somebody who's elder, who's passed away, after the puja is done, you put a garland or you put some flowers on the photo of the departed person. When you are putting the photo, the person's photo, and you are putting a garland, or sometimes, in Guru's, photos, even if the Guru is alive, you can put a garland. And when you put a garland with reverence and with devotion, what are you actually invoking? What are you worshipping? You are worshipping the Guru, or you are worshipping Bhagavan. You are not worshipping the matte finish of the photograph, correct? You are not worshipping the poster that came behind it. That's what it is. You are worshipping, that person who is stamped on that piece of paper as the photograph, and in fact you are worshipping Bhagavan. But really speaking, if you are relating to that person, in this example you are relating to that person, you're not relating to the photograph, the frame, and the paper on which it was printed, glossy finish, matte finish. You're not relating to any of that, correct? So this is the beauty in the tradition, that if everything is non-separate from Bhagavan, then you can invoke that Bhagavan in anything. Yeah. A stone, this is a deliberate superimposition. In a stone, we have a thing, and this is, not like the snake rope superimposition. In the snake rope superimposition, the superimposition is spontaneous, and it is due to what? Raga, dveshas, avidya, or kama, all these things. Fears and desires. And it's spontaneous means it's impulsive. It's a mistake. Here the superimposition is not a mistake, because every stone is Bhagavan. That's why we can say, Ishvara, you rock. Because every stone is Bhagavan. So therefore, we don't have this. This is not a superimposition even, so to speak. But for the human mind, something to hold on to. We say in this particular stone that is found in the Himalayas, that is what is that called? Saligrama. And the Himalayas were actually not there. It was the coast. Yeah. Long time ago. And then this whole Indian subcontinent that we call the Indian subcontinent, that was part of Africa. And then it separated from that. This is the theory, and they have some, they have some ways to prove this. And slowly moved at the rate of 15 kilometers in 1 year. Think of how slowly. In the ocean. And then this landmass crashed into that whole Siberia, that southern Siberian area. And the crash of the landmass, two landmasses pushing together made the Himalayas. That's why in the Himalayas you will still find sand and you will find shells. It's wonderful. And so this, there is a particular kind of a fossilized shell with the imprint of that little thing that had made the, gone in circles. So that circle is called Chakra, an insignia of Lord Vishnu. And the other one has a conch shape on it, another stone, and they sometimes come in this fossilized, things. You can find them, or you can hire someone to find them and then buy it from a shop because they have already found it. And then that one has a conch shell and this one has a circle. And the chakra and the shankha are symbols of Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu, what is this? This is like here. The head is in the heavens and the sun and moon are his eyes. How are you going to even worship that? That is just for understanding. What you do is you worship, you invoke this Mahavishnu, the ruler and the sustainer of this universe, in this miserable stone. What a beautiful thing. Saligrame Vishnum dhyayet. May one invoke this Lord in this small stone. Why? Because it has certain similarities of this insignia. Just like Lord Shiva is invoked in a smooth oval, rock called Shivalinga. Linga here means the signage. Yeah, the insignia, the sign of that which has the sign. And what is the sign? Why should this rock look like Shiva? It doesn't look like Shiva. It is the closest to appreciating formlessness. Why? Because if all the forms were taken and patted into something that to represent a Shivalinga, that which is the truth of all forms. So like this we have a upasana, we have the meditations to bring in this transcendental being is not just transcendental. It is also immanent, meaning available right here, right now, as the very presence of I, as the very presence of the breath I intake and exhale, of the very presence of the water that I drink, it is the very essence of the food I eat. It is the truth of this body, mind, sense complex. In other words, it's me. So this way, for relating, we do need a form. And that form here has been described here in a very beautiful way, which is both to relate and appreciate the grandeur and also to increase my clarity in the understanding of this Bhagavan, that the whole universe is not bereft of the Lord. That is the whole idea. So that is how we saw this is coming very close to formless. The head is in the heavens in some other loka, and what? The eyes are the celestial bodies, very difficult to visualize, because if you start taking it literally, you will say that one eye is fire and the another eye is so tiny, one eye is so big. What is wrong? That is not the idea. The idea is to see that which is the source of light as the eyes. So therefore it is coming very close to appreciating it and understanding it. And then the purport of this section, as I said, is to give this understanding in detail by showing that the world is not bereft of Bhagavan. So the next few mantras will be focusing on specific things that have come out of the Purusha. The next one is very interesting because it talks about the, what is that? The cosmology of the universe and how life has begun. Some of it we have already discussed, and that is in the next mantra. Tasmadagnis samidho yasya suryah
Tasmadagnisamido yasa surya
somat parjanyah
somat parjanyaha
oshadhayah prithivyam
oshadaya prithivyam
puman retas sinchati
puman veta sinchati
yoshitayam
yoshitayam
bahvih prajaha
bahvih prajaha
purushat samprasutaha.
purusha samprasutaha.
So tasmat means what? From that what? Purusha. From that Purusha what came? Some Agnihi. Agnihi here doesn't mean fire, means the lokas like heaven, etc., the celestial bright lokas. Samidhaha, the fuel for which? Yasya Suryaha. So the sun came, the sun is the fuel for the lokas because the lokas are all effulgent, heaven, etc. The lovely lokas are all effulgent, and so the samid means the fuel for these lokas must be the sun. The sun is the firewood for these fiery lokas. And then what? Somat parjanyaha. From the moon came the clouds. And the clouds, what came from the clouds? Rain. And what came from the rain? Oshadhayaha, plant. The plant body. And where did the Oshadhis come from? Prithivyam. They came out of the earth. And then what? Then the male Puman Retaha Sinchati places the seed. Yoshiti. Yoshiti means in the female. So it's not talking about one man and one woman. It's talking about how life begins. It's the Upanishadic, what is that? Talk of birds and bees. That is how we have to understand it. So in reproduction, what happens on this earth is that the masculine and feminine principles, they interact, and then the Bahvi Prajaha, many things are born, and all of them are born of what? The Purusha alone. So as I told you, these upasanas are there, and these upasanas call for certain deliberate superimpositions. And here the Panchagni Vidya I alluded to last time. Do you remember that? Panchagni Vidya? No. Okay. The Panchagni Vidya I referred to last time. And this Panchagni Vidya is an important upasana. And what does that have? That says that please look upon everything as Ishvara. So what are the things? 5 Agnis. 5 fires. Please look at this. This is called 5 fire meditation. Fire is what? Fire is the agent here. Is seen as an agent of certain things that happen, certain cycles. Why is fire seen as an agent? Because it spreads. And here fire is not fire, even though it's called Panchagni Vidya, it has nothing to do with fire. Just the nomenclature fire is used. So there are 5 fires, and all those fires have to be looked upon as Ishvara. In fact, one of the fires is rain, so it's not really a fire. Okay? So it is just to fire off certain focus in the mind that the word fire is used. It has nothing to do with the physical fire. Alright? So what is the first fire? The first fire is seen as heaven. Yeah, because it is all effulgent and bright. Then look at this mantra. So the first fire is heaven, Agnihi. Then the second fire is the Soma, moon. Okay? And then the third fire is the cloud, or the clouds. No, that doesn't make sense. No, well, something. I'm getting 6 fire. So obviously,
No, it's fire, it's sun.
no, it's not sun. Heaven. Don't think of Agni as fire at all. Heaven. Oh, moon is not counted. Sun and moon are not counted. Yeah. And clouds and rain are one and the same. So therefore, so what do we have? We have Agni, okay, which is heaven. Then we have, straight away you have to go to cloud, 2. Then we have fire number 3, earth. Then the fire number 4, the man. And then fire number 5, feminine, the woman. Okay? So this is what is called Panchagni Vidya. And this here, Vidya here means not knowledge, meditation. And in this meditation, what do? You contemplate upon everything as Bhagavan. Correct? Yeah. You contemplate on this is also Bhagavan, that is also Bhagavan. And the earth is Bhagavan. Clouds are Bhagavan. And I told you last time the whole belief is that the disembodied jivas come through the clouds. That is the whole idea. And they water the fields, the corn, the soya, the gluten fields, gluten-free fields. Because, everybody has to eat, correct? So they water a whole range of things. And for the macrobiotic nut, what is that? The wheat grass and raw fields, all these things are watered by the urgently wanting to reincarnate jivas. But why are they in such a hurry? Huh? Why should they be in such a hurry to reincarnate? Haven't they had enough? It's not just the desire creates a pressure. Come on, I want it fulfilled now. You can't wait. And and then while they are in this form, this disembodied spirit-like form, they cannot go on Amazon.com and order what they want. Correct? Think about it. They know what is there. Okay, I want this golf set. Why they play golf, I don't understand. This is the game I don't understand at all. First you have to, you have to bring in water, and in these drought times, and then water this whole acres and acres of land. And then put, you go and keep on, putting. That's what it is. And then, so this disembodied jiva, let us say, wants to play golf. And then it has this set of irons that it has seen and loved. Where? On Amazon.com. How can it order? It can come in front of the computer, hover, but it doesn't have fingers to press and press the web address and go there. It does not have a credit card to say, okay, charge it here, and then and then it doesn't, first of all, forget credit card, it doesn't have an address. Where will they send it? Where will they send it? Similarly, it cannot go on any website. It cannot go on, what is that other one? eBay. Yeah, it cannot go on eBay, it cannot go on Amazon, it cannot go on any of the sites and then order what it wants. Forget that, it cannot, okay fine, that's little remote ordering. Why can't it walk into a shop? It cannot walk into a shop. First of all, even if it brings a dress to the counter, if it somehow manages, everybody will run away because they will see the dress walking by itself. Because the disembodied jiva will be, invisible, so it cannot, they will see the tuxedo walking, the dress walking to the cashier. Cashier will first scream and run. That is what will happen. So therefore, they are urgently wanting to reincarnate. And that's why babies can't wait to grow up. That's what they are. And once they are grown up, they don't want to age. It's very strange. The whole thing is all topsy-turvy. I don't understand it most of the time. But that's how the whole thing is. So the demand for those desires to be fulfilled, those desires are creating a pressure. So then the rain comes and the rain waters all kinds of fields, and then the man and the woman eat the produce, gluten free, organic, raw, wheat grass, whatever it is they are eating. And then that in turn nourishes the reproductive materials, the sperm, the egg, whatever you want to say. And then and then what has happened? In a way, the Upanishad or the Hindu vision would like us to think that the jivas are already entered through the food, and then they have gone and they are sitting in the reproductive material as a potential. And when the reproductive materials mingle and give rise to this little jiva that is still in the womb or in the egg or in any kind of a nascent form, that is when this jiva that was waiting to be reincarnated supposedly sighs, heaves a sigh of relief. Thank God, now I am safe, now I can fulfill this desire. Unfortunately, as soon as it is incarnated, it forgets what was the desire that forgets all about Amazon.com, golf clubs, nothing, becomes a tiny little crying infant. Yeah, all the time crying. The parents, I don't know what kind of, what's its name, the patience they need to have. All the time crying, same kind of cry. And when they are small, they are just like machines. It's just like a feeding machine. You keep feeding and then it comes out, and then it, half of it comes out this way, half of it comes out the other way, and then you feed again. That's all the first for 5-6 months. It's like that. And they keep crying and they have forgotten everything. They have forgotten the very desires, because between that life and this life there is a thick veil, Maya. No, but that's not fair. What's the point? I incarnated just because of golf clubs? Yes. And now I forgot the golf clubs? Yes. But that's so cruel. It's not cruel. Because think of if you remember the golf clubs, think of all the other omissions and commissions that you would remember from the past life. Your mother and father, even in this life you can barely deal with them, and then from the past life also, past lives, let us say, you remembered all your mothers and fathers, and then you'll be going behind every dog, cat, donkey, because you don't know what they are, and then you're searching for the last life, mother and father, and the last lives, so many lives. And then they also remember, and they haven't forgotten what you did to them in 2 lifetimes ago, and already you are bearing grudges. And then what? You will become nothing but a bearer of grudges and guilt. That's all it's going to be. So we have to thank Mother Maya for putting a thick veil. Yes, things like golf club are forgotten, but at the same time, what else is forgotten? All the pain and sorrow of the last birth. Otherwise, nobody will want to survive. Oh my God, last life I had this horrible congenital disease and I lived with it miserably, sitting in the wheelchair for so many years. Oh my God, I don't want to be born again and go through that. So they would just not even allow themselves to be born. But that is not the case. The jiva remembers its desires and is pushed by the force of the desires to get into a body. As soon as it gets into the body, it comes into the body, belongs to the mithya level, correct? And then what remembers is the mind. The mind also has taken on the mind will always be in tandem with the body. Like you'll never have an adult mind in a baby's body. Even though you may say this is an old soul, but still it does baby-like things. You'll never find an adult mind in the baby's body. So therefore, since the mind and body are in tandem, the baby's mind cannot even fathom what the golf club is, cannot fathom what Amazon.com is. So promptly it just reverts to its basic, I want milk, I want a hug, I want a kiss. That's all the baby can think. Nothing else. I want to be held, I want to be walked, I want to be burped. That's the desires revert to those desires which are appropriate for the body-mind sense complex. Nonetheless, again a gift of Maya, there hangs a little whiff of the golf club. So later on, when the person knows and meets these golf clubs, again that force of the desire will come. It's not gone, it is just held in abeyance till the person becomes an adult. That desire then is fulfilled, at an appropriate time if it is meant to be. If not, again rain, again. Yeah. In the clouds, you have jostling jivas. No, I want to be the first raindrop. I want to be this organic, sustainable agriculture. Me. So, if that desire is not fulfilled, or if even if that desire is fulfilled, there are other desires waiting to be fulfilled, and all of them. That's why there is lightning. You know why there is lightning? Because the jivas are jostling inside the cloud. Me first. So there is fireworks. They are fighting to be the first one. Because one of them wants to golf clubs, the other one wants a BMW, and the third one wants a big house. How to build, So need a body for all that. And the fourth one just doesn't want to build anything except his own body, wants to become an athlete with a six-pack. Not the kind of six-pack we talk about in Vedanta. Not Shama, Dhamma, all those things. Literally, six-pack. So therefore, all these jivas clamoring, so this whole thing is called Panchagni Vidya. Because that way you don't leave anything out. You see this? That is why it becomes an upasana. So you have included heaven. Why not hell? Who wants to meditate upon hell? Please raise your hand. Heaven includes hell in the sense that it is an afterlife. So therefore we only focus on the positive. So here the heaven is a upalakshana. Upalakshana means what? A metaphor. A metaphor for the jivas in abeyance. Heaven and the other place, the unmentionable place, are where the jivas have gone in between the lives. So we need some kind of a metaphor to bring them back into this thing. And since we don't know where heaven is, we assume it is somewhere outside of this loka. In fact, it may be right next to us and we don't know. It's a parallel universe. So we assume it is somewhere outside, and that outside we say up somewhere. Up above the world so high. This heaven is shining, and that is the first fire. Why is that the first? See, it's all based on I. You see, this Panchagni Vidya comes back to the I. So why is heaven important? Heaven is important because the jivas waiting in abeyance to be incarnated, that is where they are. What are they doing? They are enjoying some laddus, they are enjoying some kirtan and some songs, dances from Rambha, Urvashi, all these heavenly nymphs. That's where they are. In fact, it's a good metaphor to let the jivas be doing that. Why are the jivas doing that? Because of all the punya they took from this life, they took it to spend. Punya is like the traveler's checks for the heaven, etc. For the lokas, for the 7 lokas, 6 excluding the earth. For the lokas, the traveler's check is nothing but heaven. So the traveler's check is nothing but punya. So they take their good karma and they are spending it there, and when they finish spending it, they urgently want to be reincarnated, and so then they enter the clouds. How? Don't ask, it's a belief. Okay, yeah, they enter the clouds. That's why there is lightning, because the clouds containing one set of jivas who are united about being the first rainfall jostle and get into contact with the other set of clouds, and then there is fireworks. So then after this electrifying experience, what happens? They are not electrocuted because they don't have a body, and then they rain. So the cloud becomes the second thing to visualize as Ishvara. See, it's all based on I. Why are we interested in heaven? Because the jiva is there. That conscious sentient being waiting to be reincarnated is there. Then why are we interested in clouds as the second fire? Because the jivas are there. Why are we interested in the earth? Because the jivas are irrigating the earth. And then why are we interested in the man and the woman? Because those jivas are being born through the reproductive material which was in turn nourished by the aforementioned food which was grown by the earth in response to the rain, which is all based on this sentient being. Really, it's all comes down to you. And then Bhakvi Prajaha, lots of jivas are born, but really it's only one. Why? Because it has all come from the Purusha. In fact, it is nothing but the Purusha alone. Really speaking, can you say Purusha is born? No. But still, it's an as though birth, because this is talking about the cosmology. So in this Panchagni Vidya, this is what everything is visualized as Ishvara. So what is Ishvara? Heaven is Ishvara. I meditate upon heaven, the place where I go to in between my incarnations. I meditate. It's all about I. Where I go to in between my incarnations, that is Bhagavan. I meditate. Then the clouds where I had gone in order to reincarnate, the first place of the holding place, I meditate upon the cloud as Ishvara. Then the earth which received the cloud in the form of the rain, I meditate upon. Then the Oshadhayaha, this is not the, this is just the interim. So the rain and the rain irrigating the plants and the fields, so the cloud I meditate upon, and the earth I meditate upon, which has received this. And then what? Then the man and the masculine and the feminine principles which has given birth to this body, I meditate upon as Bhagavan Ishvara. And this that has come from this, I meditate upon as Ishvara. And what is this? This is Ishvara praying to that Ishvara. So that is just, this is what in short is Panchagni Vidya. Here, the Upanishad has no reason to suddenly go off into talking about what? Upasana. Upasana means meditation. Because we haven't yet finished the teaching. There is a certain specific placement of the Upasanas in the tradition. And what is that particular placement? The placement is usually either at the beginning, like the Chandogya Upanishad, it is in the beginning. And the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is at the end. So in the beginning, the Upasana helps to clarify the mind and put the Ragadveshas in suspension or resolve them in order to prepare oneself for this knowledge. At the end, the Upasanas coming at the end, what do? They help in firming up what has been missed. And if what the Shravanam that has taken place has not yielded fruit, the Upasana will train the mind to be able to get that clarity which was received during the Shravanam, the listening. So like this, the Upasanas are placed strategically. Sometimes they are there in the middle, but not in this case. Then why are we interested in Panchagni Vidya? No. Using the language of Upasana, the Panchagni Vidya here is the five fires are mentioned just to show us a cosmology of creation. That's all it is. And it is convenient here for the Upanishads to use the language of this meditation in order to further the cosmology of the creation, to show that nothing is separate from the Purusha. And that Purusha is nothing but myself alone. It's all focused on the sentient being, and that sentient being is myself alone. This is what to show the whole thing is talked about. Okay? Yeah. So now let us read what he introduces here. Sahi sarvabhuteshu drashta shrota manta vijñata sarvakarana atma panchagni dvarena चयाः
चयाः
संसरन्ति
संसरन्ति
प्रजाः अपि
प्रजाः अपि
तस्मादेव
तस्मादेव
पुरुषात्
पुरुषात्
प्रजायन्ते
प्रजायन्ते
इति उच्यते.
इति उच्यते.
Yeah, Sahi, that Purusha alone is what? Sarva Bhuteshu, in all beings, Drashta, the seer, Shrota, the listener. We saw that last time, you know, the Vayu, Prana, everything we saw that. Drashta, Shrota. So the first line is just concluding the last mantra and then introducing the next one also. Sahi Sarva Bhuteshu, in all the beings, he in fact, he means in fact here, he alone in fact is the seer, drashta in all beings, Sarva Bhuteshu. Shrota, the listener. So whenever you hear something, it is Purusha hearing. And then Manta, Mantya means the deliberator. Vijnata, the knower. What is happening? No, didn't.
We lost the place, but
Oh, you found it? Okay. You have the place? No?
I don't have to do
in
Oh, you don't have it in Devanagari. Okay.
my short note.
Yeah, so no problem. So, Sahi Sarva Bhuteshu, in all beings, Sahi Drashta, seer, Shrota, listener, Manta, the deliberator, the thinker, Vijnata, the knower. So, meaning what? That when I see, when I hear, it all goes back to Purusha alone. It is not me who is hearing. It's not me who is seeing either. There is one fantastic upasana, very nice, marvelous upasana. It comes in Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka also. It is called Dakshinakshi Vidya. Dakshina means left. Yeah. Left and also south, but here left. Dakshinakshi Vidya. Akshi eye. So the left eye meditation. You know, what is the left eye meditation? You visualize a little Purusha. Little means it has to fill inside the pupil, you see. Yeah. And that Purusha is not the pupil at all, it is the teacher. Yeah, it's not the pupil. So here you visualize the Purusha behind the pupil of the eye, and then you just sit, in an open place. You go to a park, you go on a hike, sit on top of a hill, whatever it is, where you have some things to look at. And those some things that you look at must not be the everyday things you look at, because that you take for granted. And then everyday things you look at, you have a certain connection. Ragadvesha connection is there. Oh, I don't want to look at this, because if I look at that book, I think of all the things I have to do. And if I look at the dishes, then I have to think of, I have to put them away, or I have to wash them. So don't look at the everyday things, because there is a Ragadvesha connection. Go to some nature place, water, where? Lake, ocean, sun, sand, beach, what else? Forests, mountains, trees, like this. So you visualize the Purusha behind the left pupil, and then you half close the eyes and be very, very connected to the left eye and start seeing the universe, and see that the Purusha is seeing. It's just marvelous meditation. It's fantastic. You forget how much time has gone by. This is one meditation where you will not be opening one eye to look at the clock. I said I would meditate for half an hour, is half an hour over. You will not even see how time has gone. That is the whole Dakshinakshi Vidya. So and then after spending a good time with this upasana, at least 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, whatever it is, then you start doing that all the time. Yeah, because first you introduce yourself to the Purusha behind the eye, and then you start seeing certain very desirable things, like not even desirable, appreciative things that you don't have any kind of a history with. like trees and flowers, all these things. So then after that you come back into your own world and you are able to see the day-to-day things also with that same objectivity. This mantra, this upasana gives objectivity. Gives objectivity because I am neither the seer nor the hearer nor the thinker, and these things that used to annoy me are not annoying me because I don't have that subjective vision alone, because the Purusha behind the eye is watching everything. In fact, that Purusha alone is seeing. But what about the right eye? Ignore it. Yeah, just focus on the left eye. Why not the right eye? Well, if you are left-handed, then you focus on the right eye. So purposely the non-dominant body part is here done, because again with the right eye, if you are right-handed, you have certain orientation. It's to circumvent that this is given. So the Purusha alone is the seer. Even through this Dakshinakshi Vidya, you find that the Purusha alone is the seer. Sacha sahi drashta, seer, shrota. So who is listening to this class?
Purusha.
Purusha. Is Purusha self-ignorant? No. Then why is Purusha listening to the class? As though. And the Purusha so therefore the Purusha alone is the Shrota, because the Shravana Kriya, the Shravanam, the act of listening is happening because the Purusha is not just behind the eye, behind the ears also, behind, so to speak. Yeah. As though behind the ears as well, because who is listening? Purusha is listening and nodding his head, yes, this is good. Who is speaking? Purusha is speaking. Yeah, that is how it is. So the Purusha is listening. And then Manta, thinker, deliberator. Should I do this? Should I do that? It is the doubt of who? Purusha. The Purusha is the doubter. No. You are the doubter. Purusha is just shining the light on this doubt. Purusha is posing. We saw, in the Kathopanishad we saw Rupam, Pratirupam Babhuva, takes on every single form. And so therefore here too takes on the form of the doubter, itself free of all doubts, takes on the form of the one who is a redoubtable human being. And what does this human being say? Should I go to class or should I not go to class? Big doubt. Should I eat this or should I eat that? Never says should I eat or not eat. That's not the doubt. Should I eat this or should I eat that other thing? Doubt. And so like this, all these doubts, who has? Who has? Jiva or the Ahankara, whatever you want to call it. But poor Purusha gets caught up and he is told that you are the doubter. As though, really. Because the Purusha is the very light that shines on that doubt. Because of the presence of the Purusha, the presence of the doubt is because of the presence of the Purusha. There is only one is. So when you say doubt is, Purusha undoubtedly is. So Manta, then Vijnata, that fellow who ran around the streets of ancient Athens. Who was that? I know, Eureka, Archimedes, yeah. Eureka, he said, Eureka means I know. Yeah, I have found it. I have discovered it. In fact, he didn't discover anything. It was Purusha, Vijnata, the one that ran saying, I know, I have found it. He did not find anything because the water was displaced by his body getting into the bath. And then he thought, he was able to think from that the amount of water displaced is directly proportional to the mass of what is being put in the water. And that's how he discovered this. Discovered, not invented. Discovered means it was already there as Purusha. So he discovered the principle of buoyancy. What floats, what sinks, under what circumstances, all these things he found out. And then he said, I found this out. It was not him who was the knower. Who is the knower? Purusha. Because the Purusha is that sentience which blesses the buddhi with knowledge. So we have Shrota, Drashta, seer, Shrota, listener, Manta, deliberator, thinker, Vijnata, knower. So all the stages that this jiva goes through, I see, I hear, I know, I think, all this is nothing but who? Purusha. That is the answer to every question that will come. Yeah. And then Sarvakarana Atma. It is the Atma in the form of the causation of everything. The as though causation. Because really speaking, we already saw earlier in the Bhashya, there is no Jagat. Jagataha Vismriti Prayaha means what? Jagataha Vismriti Prayaha, meaning mostly the Jagat is forgotten, it's not even there. That is a definition of Jagat. For the Jagat it is Vismriti Prayaha. Prayaha means most of the time. What is Jagat? Best forgotten, it is not even there. So we saw that. So therefore this is just talking about the as though cosmology. And so here we have the Sarvakarana Atma, the causation of everything, the I who pervades everything in the form of the cause. So Panchagni Dvarena, through this 5 fire language, through this language, Yaha Samsaranti, everything that moves in the universe, what is that? Prajaha, the sentient beings, all the things that move in the universe. Samsaranti means populate, move, exist. Must be time for break. That's why the book is falling. Got it. Thank you. So things that exist, things that move, and all the things that move, all the prajaha. Prajaha means prakarshena jayante iti prajaha. Praja, feminine now. That's why it says yaha samsaranti. So they who move, praja, prakarshena jayante, they are born by force. By the force of their desires and their whatever they need to exhaust by way of karma. So that is the force that brings them in. So praja means that which are magically born as though through some special force. So these so-called things that are born, these jiva lings, these jiva lings, things that are born of the Purusha alone. But that doesn't mean the Purusha is the creator of the jiva. No. Because we have seen Sahi, that's why this was talked about in the beginning. Sahi, Drashta, Shrota, Manta, Vijnata. Or he alone is the knower, seer, thinker, deliberator, doubter, resolver, everything, listener, everything. Then what? So therefore, all these things that are born from him are himself alone. So there is no really birth taking place. There is no such thing that is created, and the Purusha is not created. The Purusha assumes name and form in every being, and that being is called Praja here. The Jiva is called Prajaha, and Prajaha Bahvayaha it should be, but anyhow, Bhakvi Prajaha Prajayante. That's why again Prajayante is given, so that the word Praja is seen as that born of this special dispensation or force or blessing of this karma and desires. So therefore everything is, we cannot look down upon the jiva. Oh, you stupid creature, you got reincarnated again. No, because it is Bhagavan. It is all Bhagavan. You see that you Bhagavanise and Ishwarise everything. More we'll see after the break. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Nasya Purnamadagya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. come back in 10 minutes.